Okay, this should be coming in. What I have to say is basically for the parents. So we'll be able to get started in a few. Good evening. I'd like to thank everybody for coming. As y'all know, that FAFSA completion is now a state mandate requirement for graduation. So if you do not complete the FAFSA or fill out the waiver forms that I sent at the beginning of the year saying that you're not going to complete the FAFSA and you don't want any financial aid because you're either not going to college or you're going to pay for it yourself, you must complete the FAFSA or that form, or else you will not be allowed to graduate by state law now. Now, we do have this, and Miss Ann is going to walk you guys through it, but also each one of your students, every senior, I created a Google Classroom just for the seniors so I can post updates, scholarships, and things of that nature, important information that they will need. The information needed to actually complete the FAFSA is also in there. So I added that link, and that'll walk you through exactly how to do it for those who want to do it on their own, who won't need this. Because I see that some of the parents on here have kids that's already in college, so I'm sure you already know how to do it. But if this is a refresher, but if not, have your child show you their folder that I created, and it has the FAFSA completion guide in it. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Miss Ann and block out my video so she can get started.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. I've worked with St. James Parish for several years, and it's always a pleasure to be there. Unfortunately, I won't be able to be there in person this year. I hope everybody's doing well. I work as a student financial aid consultant with RELA, and my job is to make sure that you all have the resources you need to complete the FAFSA, and then you have a better understanding of the student financial aid process. As Mr. Oog just mentioned, you are now required to complete the FAFSA as a requirement for graduation. And the purpose of this is to ensure that your money is ready and waiting for you when you begin college this fall. Now, it can be expensive, so now is the time to start thinking about some of those expenses and preparing to pay for them. And they include your equipment, books, and supplies like your textbooks, notebooks, a computer if you need one, your personal expenses like your phone bill, money to do your laundry if you're living away from home, fuel for your car to go back and forth to campus, and any food purchases outside of your meal plan. Your room and board, which could include your dorm room if you are living on campus, or an apartment if you're living off campus, and your tuition and fees. Now, when you do your research, you go to your college websites to find out what their cost of attendance is. Often they'll just show their tuition, but fees must also be included, your parking, library, technology, and athletic fees. So make sure you're doing your calculations and understanding exactly how much an academic year is going to cost. And the good news is that financial aid is available from the U.S. Department of Education, the state of Louisiana in the form of the TOPS scholarship, your college and career school, and nonprofit and private organizations. Now, every year, the federal government provides more than $120 billion in student financial aid, and we want to make sure that you have your portion. The types of student financial aid include the federal Pell Grant, the federal Supplemental Education Opportunity Grant, the Teacher Educational Assistance for College and Higher Education Grant, the Iraq and Afghanistan Service Grant, Federal Work Study, and direct subsidized, unsubsidized, and PLUS loans. Now, federal student aid grants are a form of financial aid that does not have to be repaid. So you always want to accept any grants that you're offered. They include the Pell Grant for undergraduates with financial need, FSEOGs for undergraduates with exceptional financial need. The service grants are for students of military parents who died defending the country following 9/11. and teach grants for students who are pursuing a career in teaching. Now, the Federal Work Study Program provides part-time jobs to help you pay for your education expenses. So when you tell the financial aid office that you're interested in federal work study, you're going to be considered for this program and offered jobs. Now, this is a FAFSA question, and we encourage all students to say yes to this question. It doesn't obligate you to accept any of the positions, but they'll know to offer them to you. Now, the earnings from these jobs are going to be paid directly to you, the student, and should be used to pay for your college expenses. And these jobs look great on your first professional resume. Now, let's talk 1 minute about student loans. And no one wants to have to take out student loans. But if you need them to finish your college career, then they are a good investment. But it's good to understand the different types. Subsidized loans are based on financial need, and no interest is charged on this type of loan until you graduate or cease to attend. On the other hand, unsubsidized loans are for everyone, regardless of your financial situation. However, interest does accrue while the student is in school and then throughout the life of the loan. So you can see that there is a big difference between direct and subsidized and unsubsidized loans, and you always want to accept the student loan, the subsidized loans first. And you can remember this by telling yourself that the U in unsubsidized means that you always pay the interest on that loan. Now, if you are offered loans and you do need them to complete your academic year, you should always accept the federal student loans first because payments aren't due until you graduate or cease to attend. The interest rate is fixed at a lower rate and no credit check is required. This type of loan is in the student's name only. On the other hand, private loans should be accepted only as needed because most require that payments be made while you're still in school. The interest rate is going to be much higher, and they almost always require a cosigner, which means that you are then going to have to ask a parent or another adult to become part of that loan and help you pay it back if you can't. So to dispel the myth, almost everyone is eligible for some type of federal student aid. And all federal student aid and most institutional and private aid is contingent upon completion of the FAFSA. Now, it launched on October 1st, and it does so every year because the FAFSA must be submitted each year that you're in college. Student financial aid is awarded on a first-come, first-served basis, so you want to make sure you're getting your FAFSA submitted as soon as possible because we've already been alerted that over 1 million FAFSAs have already been submitted for next academic year. So get to the head of that line while the money is still available so you will be offered the maximum award that you're eligible to receive. And remember to pay attention to your FAFSA deadlines. Your colleges are going to have priority FAFSA deadlines. The state of Louisiana, in the form of the TOPS scholarship, has a FAFSA completion deadline. And yes, the FAFSA can serve as your TOPS application. And then federal student aid has a deadline as well. You might also want to check with Mr. Wu. He may have a deadline for you to meet to be able to meet that graduation requirement. Now, before you start the FAFSA process, collect all of the documents that you're going to need to complete the form. And if you do, it shouldn't take longer than 30 minutes to complete the entire FAFSA. And those forms are going to include the student and parents' Social Security cards, the student and parents' 2019 federal income tax returns, if you filed one, your W-2s, because there's information on this form that might not be found on the federal tax return, and then bank statements and records of your investments. because you're going to be asked to report these balances as of the date you submit your FAFSA. Now you'll begin by creating an FSA ID, and this allows the student and his parent to identify themselves electronically when accessing the FAFSA. It's going to consist of a username and password that you're going to create, and it should reflect only your personal information. Now, each student and one of his parents should create an ID at fsaid.ed.gov. Now, only use your personal email address to create this ID, because once you graduate from high school, you may no longer have access to that high school email account, and federal student aid will have no way to get in touch with you. Also, don't share information. Don't use a sister or brother or perhaps your mom or dad's mobile phone number within your ID, even if it's the alternate number, and use your own email addresses, mom and dad, as well. Now, your FSA ID is your official electronic signature for federal student aid documents. So you want to make sure that you are recording it and keeping it in a very safe place because it is legally binding. Now, if you don't have access to your computer when you're ready to get started, you can always download the FAFSA mobile app, and you can use it to submit your FAFSA on your mobile phone or any other mobile device that has internet access. Or if you prefer, you can use the web-based version at fafsa.gov. Now, students, if you want to get started on the mobile app, and mom or dad, you want to complete the parent section on the web-based version, that's fine. Everything will be integrated into one FAFSA when it's time to sign and submit. When you are in the FAFSA, you'll begin by logging in with the student's FSA ID, because the FAFSA is the student's application for federal student aid. Now, the parent FSA ID will be used later if you choose to transfer your information from the IRS into the FAFSA, and then again to sign the student's FAFSA. The high school class of 2021 should complete the 2021-2022 FAFSA, because that's the academic year that you're applying for financial aid. You'll see that there is another option, and that option is for students who are attending college this academic year. There are 8 sections that need to be completed before you can submit your FAFSA, and those begin with the student demographics, where the student will be asked to report his social security number, name, date of birth, email address, home address, residency status, and gender. Next is the school selection, where the student will report the name of his high school, the colleges he wants his FAFSA data to be sent to, and his housing plans on each of those campuses. The dependency status asks the student to consider a list of 10 questions to determine his dependency status. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. You'll be asked to report the number of dependents that are living in your household and your parents' education level. And often parents ask why they're being asked about their education level. But that is because there could be additional free money for first-generation college students. So make sure you're answering that question correctly. Next, you'll move to the parent demographics, where the parents will supply their social security numbers, their marital status, and their email addresses. And then the parent and student financials, where each of you will be asked to report your 2019 working wages, any federal benefits that you receive, and savings and investment account balances. Now, I stressed working wages because if you receive workers' comp, or if you receive any social security disability, that is not reported on the FAFSA. Now, let me go back for a minute, because You'll see the next stage is the sign and submit. And then once you submit, you'll get the confirmation. Now, as you're moving through the FAFSA, if you need clarification about a question, you can always click on the question mark to the right of that question. You can select the hyperlinks that are provided. You can request a FAFSA online chat, call Federal Student Aid, or contact me at Leela's FAFSA helpline. But for this session, I'm going to cover only the most commonly asked FAFSA questions, or we'd be here for probably another 30 minutes. But if you have one that I don't address, please drop it in the Zoom chat box and we'll talk about those at the end of the presentation. Or if you want to speak to me directly, I'm going to leave my email address and the FAFSA helpline number for you at the end. Now, a student must be a citizen or an eligible non-citizen to complete a FAFSA. But if his parents are neither, they will just enter zeros any place a parent social security number is asked for. Now, if you're not quite sure what an eligible non-citizen is and you think you could be in this category, this is one of the hyperlinks. So click there to get a more detailed description. Young men between the ages of 18 and 26 must be registered with Selective Service to receive any federal benefits. And because federal student aid is considered a federal benefit, guys, you do have to be registered. Now, if you haven't already done so, you can register within the FAFSA, even if you haven't turned 18 yet. Just click on I would like for you to register me, and that will happen as of the date you turn 18. Now, this is an optional requirement. If you do not want to register with Selective Service, then that's fine, but you will be expected to pay out of pocket for your college expenses. Only the colleges that you list on the FAFSA in that school selection section are going to consider you for student financial aid. So add all of the schools that you're considering, and you can add up to 10 at a time. Even if you haven't finished your admissions applications to those colleges, go ahead and list them on your FAFSA so you don't have to go back in later and do that. And they'll just hold on to your FAFSA data until you complete the application process. So to determine a student's dependency status, these are the 10 questions that will be asked. And remember, they're asking these questions of the students. I'm going to quickly go over them. Will you be 24 or older by January 1st of the year for which you're applying for financial aid? Are you married or separated but not divorced? Will you be working on a graduate degree? Do you have children who receive more than half of their support from you? Do you have dependents other than children or a spouse who live with you and receive more than half of their support from you? Are you currently serving on active duty in the U.S. Armed Forces for purposes other than training? So boot camp and basic training, for those of you who are going on into the military, this is still considered training. So you would still be a dependent student. Are you a veteran of the U.S. Armed Forces? At any time since you turned 13, were both of your parents deceased? Were you in foster care? Or were you a ward or dependent of the court? Are you an emancipated minor? Or are you in legal guardianship as determined by a court? And it's important to note that legal custody is not always considered legal guardianship. So have your documentation with you when you answer that question. And then the last question, are you an unaccompanied youth who is homeless, or are you self-supporting and at risk of being homeless? Now, if you can answer yes to just one of these questions, and you can provide a legal document supporting that claim, then you are considered an independent student for FAFSA purposes and will not be asked to provide parental information. And I know that these terms you may not be familiar with. Um, Always feel free to contact Federal Student Aid if you have a question. Talk to Mr. Oob or call Leela's FAFSA helpline and we will help you and answer your questions. But for FAFSA purposes, even if you're living alone and you file your own taxes, but you can't answer one of those 10 questions, you still are considered a dependent student and must provide information about your parents. Now, the number one question we're asked is, which parents do I report on my FAFSA? So the rule of thumb is that the parent or parents that you've lived with the longest in the past 12 months should be listed on your FAFSA. If you live with both of your biological parents, then that's easy, just list both of them. But if the parent that you've lived with the longest in the past 12 months is either separated, divorced, or was never married, then you should list only that biological parent on your FAFSA. However, if that parent is now remarried, you must list that step parent as well. In other words, Federal Student Aid wants to know the financial standing of the household that the student has lived in the longest in the 12 months prior to the date that the FAFSA was submitted. Now, if you are identified as a dependent student, but your parents refuse to provide their information on your FAFSA, you can submit it, stating that you are unable to provide parental information. However, you must then contact the college's financial aid office to discuss your situation. Because if you don't, you'll only be offered federal student loans. And we want to make sure that you are considered for the grant monies as well. So don't be shy about talking to them. They're there to help you. Just give them a call once you get your FAFSA submitted. And to make the financial aid process go a lot smoother, we encourage you to use the Internal Revenue Service's data retrieval tool. This is where you will leave the FAFSA with your permission, go over into the IRS site, grab your tax information, and pop it right into the FAFSA. It makes it a lot quicker, and it makes making errors it reduces your chances of making an error on your FAFSA. It also diminishes the student's chances of being selected for verification. Once you are in the IRS site, you want to grab your 2019 income tax return and complete each of these fields with the exact information that's shown on your tax return. Because the IRS wants to make sure the person on their site is the person who is entering that information. So we've had situations where the tax preparer misspelled the taxpayer's name. You have to misspell it on this site. If you've moved since 2019's filings, you still want to use the address that's listed on your return. And then you're almost finished and it's almost time to sign and submit. But before you do, I want to encourage you to review your student aid report. And this is a list of every question you were asked on the FAFSA and every answer you gave. And it just makes sure that the financial aid office is receiving the most accurate data so they can quickly process your financial aid. Now you're in the sign and submit section where the student and one parent will be asked to provide their FSA IDs to electronically sign the FAFSA. And once you submit, you'll receive a FAFSA confirmation page where you will see the date and time you've submitted it, the schools that you sent your FAFSA data to, instructions on what comes next, what else do I have to do to complete this process, and then your financial aid estimates. And I want to stress the word estimate because everybody gets excited when they see the dollar amounts, but Federal Student Aid will not be awarding your aid. Each college financial aid office will. And this is just a recommendation to those colleges using the FAFSA data you entered. Now, if you begin a FAFSA and you have to stop for some reason and save it, make sure that you are going back in within the next 45 days to complete it. Because if you don't, it's going to be wiped from the system. Now, the student is going to be receiving email from Federal Student Aid telling them that they need to take some action. So make sure that the student is checking his email timely. What if you've submitted your FAFSA, but you want to go in and add a school, you want to change your contact information, or change, or maybe the college has asked you to make some changes to your FAFSA? There are a number of ways to do that, but the quickest way is to go back to FAFSA.gov, log in with the student's ID, make those changes, and sign and submit. Once your FAFSA is fully processed, which usually takes between 3 and 5 days, it is then shared with the colleges that you've given them permission to send it to. Each college financial aid office will then begin to identify any aid that you might be eligible to receive on their campus. Now, if your family's financial situation has changed since 2019, and we know we're going to see this all over the country, but especially in Louisiana with all the hurricanes that have blown through our state, please contact your college's financial aid office because they have the ability to adjust your aid by using their own professional judgment. So say one or both of your parents has had a decrease in income or lost jobs, or there have been some unexpected medical expenses that have been incurred. The financial aid office wants to hear about that because they may have some additional grant money to provide you to finish out your academic year. Because they are trying to determine your net price, and they're going to do this by identifying any grants and scholarships they can offer you from their cost of attendance. And the net price is what you'll be responsible for paying, either out of pocket or by accepting student loans. Now remember that each college that you list on your FAFSA is going to provide you with a separate financial aid offer. It'll show their cost of attendance, and it will line item any grants, scholarships, work study, student loans that they can offer you. So read over each one of these carefully, respond to any requests that they might have of you so that they can process your financial aid. And then once you do decide which school you're going to, you'll want to accept your offer in this order. Scholarships and grants, because this is gift aid that does not have to be repaid. Federal work study, this is money that you've already earned, so you don't have to pay that back. And then student loans, because this money is borrowed and you have to pay it back with interest. Now, I know that this is a lot of information that we've covered, and Leela again this year has published their FAFSA completion guide for the class of 2021, and it's free for all Louisiana high school seniors. Mr. Oop said that he has posted in your Google Classroom, so please check there or email me for a copy. And I'll also include Leela's senior checklist to help you stay on track to be ready for college in the fall. But I don't want to end without touching on scholarships. And you all know, Mr. Oop has told you that this is gift aid that does not have to be repaid. And you can find them you'll hear about them from the colleges that you're applying to, your parents' employers, community, religious, social organizations offer them. Some are merit-based, awarded on academic achievement or some special talent that you might have, and others are based on financial need. Some might cover the entire cost of your attendance. Yes, sir.
Yes, not to cut you off, but just to jump in. Those two documents are also up in there in Google Class, the tracking sheet for the seniors also with the FAFSA completion. And we do have a couple of scholarships that I added to that Google class as well, but most of our scholarships come in during the spring.
Very good. So you know where to find them. Now, um, you know, these scholarships could cover your entire cost of tuition, or they could just be a one-time award. But applying and winning these scholarships is going to reduce the cost of your education, which bottom line is going to reduce your student loan debt. So you know that Mr. Oob has plenty of them that are going to be posted. Your college financial aid office sees a lot of scholarships coming through their offices. And talk to your admissions recruiters as well. Leela is offering a $1,000 FAFSA completion scholarship. So this is for all Louisiana high school seniors that complete their FAFSA. And then once you're in college, you can apply for our $1,000 Choose Louisiana scholarship if you're attending a college in the state of Louisiana, and we want to keep you here. You can find out the details and the applications on our website at leela.org. Now, for students who might be going to a pricier college, Leela does administer a nonprofit education loan program. And you can find out more about that at leelachoice.org. And now is the time to ask those questions. And I'm going to check the chat box in just a minute, and I'm going to turn it back over to Mr. Ood. But I want to leave our FAFSA helpline for you, and also my email address if you want to speak to me personally. Mr. Ood?
Yes, ma'am. So seniors and parents, make sure that you show your parents the Google Classroom so you can show them all the information that's forthcoming. Also, I'll try my best to keep parents updated through the Facebook portal that we have through the school and my personal site. Miss Anna is going to check any messages that you guys may have sent. And I know we're out on a break, but keep looking for updates because as things come in, I'll be posting to your Google Classroom. So do anyone have any questions for me? You can email me, students, as soon as you start typing in my email address or my name, it'll pop up so you can email me with any questions. I know we're off next week. Tomorrow I'll definitely be here, but I will be responding to your questions and concerns that you guys may have. But students, make sure that you keep your parents informed. Your senior year, you do not want to let this year fly by. And I can guarantee you the only people who won't receive scholarships are those who don't apply. Every year we have organizations that get upset with the schools and students because some students just don't apply. So and most of the scholarships, I'm gonna be honest, you can use pretty much the same essays and tweak them just a little bit, and it'll work for all scholarships. And the only way you're guaranteed not to get one is if you don't apply.
I had a question asking if a copy of this presentation was going to be available. And I'm glad you mentioned that because we are going to post this on our YouTube channel. It's called Ask Leela. So if you want to go over there and check it out, this presentation will be posted for your school. I'm also going to send that link to Mr. Ood. Has anybody already completed their FAFSA? You know, the holidays are a good time to get that done. People are maybe have a break from work, students are at home. It's a good time, and I am available to help you with that if you want to give me a call.
And I know that this presentation kind of was just an overview, but that information, the 1, 2, 3 step is in your Google Classroom. And it's very simple to do. It should take you about a half an hour. And even if you don't have your tax form, it does help. But there's the link that you can actually pull up your last year's taxes by using your social. So that knocks out a lot of time. And if anyone has any question or needs some more one-on-one, feel free to contact me or Miss Ann, and I'll be more than willing to help.
Okay, I don't see any more questions. So I want to wish you all the best of luck this year, and I'll be waiting to hear from you and receive your FAFSA completion scholarship applications. Thanks for having me, Mr. Wu.
Thank you. I just sent my email, and once you put this on the website, I'll be sure to share it with the students through the Google link. And I'm also sure that some of the parents who have their email address in the system, that they should have also received the link. And if not, what I can do is, if you guys would just email me, I can go in and manually add you guys to the classroom as well. So you'll get the information firsthand instead of relying on our students, because we all know that they always bring all the information home like days in advance and never wait till last minute. Me being sarcastic. So I would definitely look forward to you guys sending me those requests. And for the ones who haven't accepted, I'll send a reminder out. And I would like to thank you, Miss Ann, and for everyone who showed up tonight and participated. Hopefully this was a help, and we will be doing more. Like I said, feel free to contact me or reach out to me for any questions or concerns. Thank you.
All right, good night, everyone.
Good night. Happy holidays.